right, welcome back. So we've got sign in done. So you can sign in and you can get over here and it says main works. But now we're going to start learning about data some. So what our goal is our goal is to display data. An interesting thing with Firebase that you can do is you can display data even when you don't have a way to make data. Because what you can do is you can go over to the Firebase console and you can actually just make data in here. You can just make some fake data for you to use. And that's what we're going to do to start things off here. So you can see that mine has some fake data in it already. I've got this user's path, and then on the user's path, I've got Fisher DS and a couple other users. Inside the Fisher DS path, I've got some real quotes. So these are real quotes. Each one has a password, a service, and a username. And then it's got an automatically generated ID. And you can see that these are actually getting used by my production web app, which is kind of neat. Just to kind of get to the same place as you, though, I'm going to go ahead and wipe out all of my data. One neat thing about Firebase is you can wipe out all your data with a click of a mouse. So now all my data, even on the production site, is all gone. So be careful about that one. And let's go ahead and add some data back. So let's go ahead and add back this user's path. In the user's path, pick your Rolls-Holman username. So this is your UID. One neat thing that we got to pick about when we did Rose Fire is we got to pick what the UID would be, and we just use your Rolls-Holman ID, which is really kind of nice. Usually UIDs are gibberish characters, but ours are actually like your Rolls username, which is cool. Inside your area is going to be an auto-generated key, so I'm just going to call it auto-gen key 1. And then inside that area, you're going to have a service. So let's just go ahead and call it, Google Fi. Maybe that's the service that you're using. And you're going to have a username. And so my username is going to be Fisher DS. And then you're going to have a password, which I'll just write down, blah, blah. And then once you've got that looking pretty good, you can click on add. If you wanted to, you could go ahead and add yourself a second password. So I'll just call this auto-gen key 2. And I'll just go ahead and give myself another service. So let's just go ahead and say Spectrum. That's my cable provider. And then my username over here is also Fisher DS. And then my password over here, you make your password whatever you want. I'm going to say was Time Warner. That's the name of the company. Would have been a silly password. So there I've got one user for your Rolls-Holman username, and then he's got 2 passwords. So I think it's kind of neat that you can make that data like before you even have any way to create data, and we're going to try to display it. So the next thing we need to do is we need to tell our app about our data scheme. So it's usually nice to have either an interface or a class that represents like a single one of your data objects. So I want to make a class called password, right? It's a little confusing to call the class password like uppercase P when it has a field in it called password lowercase p. But you know what? You'll be able to manage. The way I typically organize things is I make a folder in my app. So I'm going to go ahead and say new folder called models. And I put all my models in here. So I'm going to make a new file. So this is going to be called my password.model.ts. So I've made this new file. Oh, before I get going, I can see I must have not checked in some things from the past time. So I must have not checked in all my Angular Fire stuff. Whoopsie. So this is my Rose Fire. I said Angular Fire. I'm going to say Rose Fire sign in. And technically I checked in a blank document here, but I'm okay with that. So let's talk about the password model. So as mentioned, there's kind of 2 options. One is you can make an interface. So you could do this. This is not what we're going to do, but I'm going to go ahead and type some of it as well. And you could say, hey, this interface, I've got a service, a username, and a password. And then I might also have a key, potentially a key, which would also be a string. And so I could do this and be done. The nice thing about this is that it will check any object to make sure it has these fields and no other fields. The thing that's bad about it is that if you want to create a new one, you have to do it like an object. So you have to say like username is this, password is this. To be honest, this solution right here is probably fine for most of what you would want to do. I'm going to show you an alternative. The alternative is more complex, but the alternative has the minor advantages of you could create a new one just by saying like new password. So actually it'll be a class, and you'll be able to create a new instance of it with the default constructor. It also gives you the opportunity to add methods, right? So an interface has no methods, whereas a class could have methods if you wanted. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a new class. We're going to say export class password. And what we're going to add to this password is a lot of the same things we had up here. So I guess I could copy them from up here, right? So just copy those down and uncomment them. So we're going to have a service, which is a string, a username, which is a string, and a password, which is a string. If you wanted to, you could mark these as public. They do get public by default. But I just want to make it clear that, hey, the way I'm structuring this is not private data. Anybody can use them. Anybody can set them. And I think that's what works out the easiest. You don't have to mark them as public. They would get public by default. But I thought I would just be very explicit in saying, hey, these are open to people to use. The next thing you want to do is you want to make a constructor so people can use your class. Whenever you make a constructor, there's some limitations to JavaScript. One of those limitations is that you get a single constructor. That's different than most other languages. Most other languages you make like 8 different constructors and convenient constructors, but you get one in JavaScript. There are some workarounds for it, but they don't really work that well, to be perfectly honest. And so really what we're going to do is we're going to pick a very clever system that gives us a lot of flexibility in our constructor. Here's what that looks like. We're going to say that we might receive an object, which we'll call obj, and we're just going to mark it as being an any. So it's just going to be stuff that comes in. And what we're going to do is we're going to say this dot service equals object and object dot service. This is a trick for JavaScript, and the reason this trick works is and doesn't return true or false. It actually returns the thing, right? So if you say object and the object exists, there is an object, then it'll get object.service, and if it exists, yeah, it'll give you that. And actually will return, like let's say it says Time Warner, it'll actually return it, which is neat. If it doesn't exist, what we're going to do is we're going to give it some defaults. And so we're going to say or the empty string. And again, this one does the same thing as it doesn't return true or false. It returns that string. So if this was false or this was false, then it sets the empty string to the service. And this pattern turns out to be really handy. And the nice thing about this is now you can pass in nothing, and it'll just kind of create a blank password for you. Or you could pass in another password that's fully populated, and it'll grab those things off. Or you could pass in a Firebase Snapshot, which is what we're going to do quite a bit, and you could make an actual class. The limitation is that you do have to be careful, because like if you get a Firebase Snapshot, it's not really this class. It just conforms to it. Some details on that I'll gloss over. Another thing that I've kind of glossed over is this string, right? So there might have been this string on here. Now what we could do is we could totally just add it right here. That'd be fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be a little fancier than that. And I'm going to say export class Firebase flat snapshot. So it turns out that if you have a lot of objects, they're all going to have a couple things in common. And one of the things that they have in common is that all Firebase objects might have a question key on them. And so what I want to do is I want to have the constructor have the same trick, so it might receive an object of any. And for the key, I want to be careful. I don't want to put on an empty key if it doesn't exist. So I'm actually going to be a little bit more careful with this one. And I'm going to say if object and object dot $key. Oh, that should have actually been a dollar key this whole time, so I've been messing that up. So that should have always said dollar key there. So if it exists, then stick it on here. So this $key is equal to obj $key. So if it exists, stick it on there. And now what I'm going to do with password is I'm going to say that password is actually a subclass of Firebase flat snapshot. Now it yells at me that in my constructor I don't call super. That actually is a good warning, and I do want to do that. And so what this structure lets you do is it lets you have any number of objects. Those objects are all going to extend Firebase flat snapshot. By the way, Firebase flat snapshot is just a name that I picked that was kind of silly enough that I wouldn't get it confused for like something real that comes from Firebase. But it just has a key on here. There's also another field called $exist that you could put on here. It's a function, but I don't use it very often, so I'm not even going to worry about it. So I told you before that this interface thing would have been just fine, but we did it a fancier way here, which is to make a class for a password, and there are a couple minor advantages. One advantage is that you can create a new one just by saying new, and then also you could add methods to it as well. You just have to be careful about that. So as exciting as that was, I don't want to end the video until we actually do something. So let's go into main and go into the TS file over here, and let's do something, right? And so what we want to do is very similar to what we did with movie quotes. We want to make a stream, and we want to start getting passwords. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a public password stream. So password stream. And what this guy is he is a Firebase list observable. I hate that it doesn't help me type observable because I type it wrong all the time. For password arrays. So I've got to do some imports here. If I spelled it right, I needed an R right there, and then I will import it. So it's a Firebase list observable that whenever it fires off an array of passwords. This is a little bit of a lie because really it's just snapshots that conform to the same protocol as a password, but I'm not worried about the details here. Also, public is the default, so you don't really have to say that. And then what we want to do is we want to subscribe to the right thing. So we want to subscribe to like users Fisher. And so in order to do our subscription, we need to know the UID. So we're actually going to do our subscription right here after we know the user ID. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a variable called the Firebase path. And for the Firebase path, I'm going to use backticks. Remember, there's backticks, there's single quotes, and there's double quotes. The one I want here is backticks, which is just to the left of the one key. And I'm going to put in the path, which is users / and then $user.uid. So when I'm signed in, this is going to be Fisher DS. For you, it's going to be something different, of course. So that's my Firebase path. And then I'm going to say this.password stream is equal to, and then here I need the Firebase database. So I'm going to have to use dependency injection. So I got the Firebase auth object like that. I got the router like that. Now I need the Firebase database. So I'm just going to go and say private. I'm going to call it DB, which is just what they do in some of their notes, as discussed in previous videos. Angular Fire database. It's of course yelling at me that I need to import it. I haven't decided the best way to do indents. I don't really love the way that indented, but it's fine. So in my Angular Fire database, I'm going to say .list, and I'm going to pass in here my Firebase path. And obviously, if you wanted to get rid of the variable, you could totally just plunk this thing down right inside of here. Whichever way you like to do things. If you like to make those interstitial variables, that's fine. They help code readability sometimes. But here I've got the stream connected there. So now I'm connected to my stream. Instead of subscribing to the stream, I'm going to go into my HTML and I'm going to do an async trick. So right now my HTML says main works because we just haven't done squat in here yet. And we're going to need to start doing stuff. So here's what we're going to do. We're gonna use Angular Material 2, and we're gonna use their grid. So they've got a grid list thing here. So it's just kind of like a 1, a 2, a 3. So they've got a grid system. So you can kind of see their style here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to copy some of their grid list and paste it into here. So their grid list has a number of columns. Let's just go ahead and set that to 3. Their example set a row height. I'm just going to not set a row height and just kind of roll the dice and see what happens. Theirs had 4 tiles in it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have just 1 tile, and I'm going to use an ng4 with it. So here's what my ng4 looks like. So I'm going to type a-ng4. You notice that there's an ng4 and there's an ng4 async. Go ahead and pick async. All async does is it types pipe async, which is fine. And so it says let item. So I'm going to say let password of stream. So I'm going to call this my password stream. And here's where it's got to match exactly to what the TypeScript says. And sometimes I just like to copy paste it, right? So password stream, pipe async, and then it's got this as list. I don't really need to reference the list anywhere else, so I'm just going to take that off. And so this is what each tile is. And so now what do I want to put inside each tile? It's going to take some work to do it right. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to use this another snippet, a-prej. And what that does is that displays something as a JSON object. So I'm just going to display the password as a JSON object and call that good enough. So when I save it here, if everything worked, there should be a lot of magic. So I've set up my stream, and my stream is going to look to that right place. I've set up my HTML, and my HTML should be, making a for loop, and then it should be putting it into a grid as well. To be honest, this is testing a little bit more than I want to test at once, but it's time to go see if it all worked, right? And I can see that it went well. And so what's going on here is there's a grid. My screen is kind of small, so it's kind of hard to see everything on my grid. I guess I could change mine to 2 columns just for my projector here. And so you can see that it's showing you the data that it got from the cloud. So it's got Google Fi, which had a password of blah, blah, and it's got Spectrum, which has a was Time Warner. And you can see that that is indeed the data that was for me. Cool. So we are pulling data from our database. We are pulling only the information that's for my UID, and it's all working great. If I were to sign out and sign in as somebody different, I would see no data, but it's kind of hard for me since I've only got 1 Rolls Home account. All right, so that is more than enough for this video. You're pulling data down. Come back next time. We'll do some more fun stuff. See you then. Bye.